Just a quick reminder before we jump in. Everything we share here is personal and subjective and meant for entertainment and educational purposes only. We reflect on patterns and dynamics from our lives, research, and what we've learned from our work. But this isn't professional advice or a substitute for therapy. When we mention people like family, friends, or exes, those references are intentionally vague or altered to protect privacy and don't reflect every person in our lives who fits those labels. Our goal is to support healing, not blame. Please check the full disclaimer in the show notes for more information.
Welcome to Self-Centered, the podcast that's all about you. We're your hosts.
I'm Allie, a therapist and life coach.
And I'm Katie, a fitness coach and personal trainer. We know what it's like to feel burnt out, taken for granted, and like your life revolves around everyone but yourself.
By learning to trust yourself, prioritize your needs, and set healthy boundaries, we help you break free from guilt, overfunctioning, and toxic patterns that keep you stuck in relationships and a life that doesn't truly serve you.
Join us each week as we dive into the tools, stories, and mindset shifts you need to create a life that centers you.
Because being self-centered isn't selfish, it's essential. Hi, everyone. We're laughing because Katie's dog, Nakaya, is... You know how dogs will scratch or they'll just get their bed all set up for themselves?
They're trying to dig to China?
Yeah, exactly. So she's over there digging. we were just giving her the time to get settled so we could start so you didn't hear it in the background. And, it took a while. So instead, we're just starting and you probably can't even hear it. So
she's settled down now.
Okay, great. All right. Today we're going to talk about where did your beliefs about boundaries come from? Whether you are more likely to have rigid boundaries or porous boundaries or hopefully healthy boundaries. Maybe you are the rare person who just naturally, you grew up maybe in a family that had really healthy boundaries and all your communities had really healthy boundaries. And when you see unhealthy boundaries in society, you recognize that that's unhealthy and it's never been internalized for you. If that's you, fuck you. I'm just kidding.
I'm like, what's that?
Yeah, exactly.
What that must be like.
If that's you, we're really happy for you. And if you want to come on and talk to us about what that's like, we would be fascinated. For all of you other people, we are going to talk about where did these unhealthy beliefs about boundaries come from? The beliefs that we have about boundaries, they come from culture. Our ideas of what's normal or too much is shaped by our culture, by social norms, by institutions, and understanding these cultural patterns will help us to reclaim our own. It's especially important for people who were raised in systems that rewarded overfunctioning or silence, shutting down. So as you are listening to this, I want you to be thinking about, does this relate to me? Has this shown up in my life? This belief system, this experience, this institution, because you might have internalized some of these things. And what we want to do is identify that, challenge it, and shift to become healthier. And we have lots of episodes on how do you have healthier boundaries. So you can go listen, especially to our first boundaries episode. It's good. We'll link it.
One of the things that I am excited about for this episode is, yes, identifying what it looks like in society, but also because we've become so ingrained with that. Like, I feel like sometimes we live in two separate boxes. Like, what do I do relative to other people in society, big picture, big world, versus what do I do relative to me and my small situation in my small world? And I feel like this is a really good way of bridging the gap so you don't keep reinforcing bad habits on a societal level that then come back and bite you in the butt on a personal level.
What's an example of that? Because
Well, I feel like this might start giving spoilers, but if we are creating cancel culture on a bigger level.
Oh, if we're contributing to it. Yeah.
Yes. Then when it comes to someone causing us a harm on a small level, it's like, well, fuck them. They don't deserve to be in my life. That sort of thing.
Yes. Yes. Because we are society and culture. Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure.
So,
I think like big world
point
versus small world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
exactly.
that we're contributing to that, to strengthening it, Or we can contribute to, I'm not going to participate that, and it weakens it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then also the way that you're interacting with other people. If you have healthier boundaries instead of more rigid or porous boundaries, you're modeling healthier boundaries. So then exponentially, you're contributing to a healthier culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. All right. So recap, we talked about this last episode, but quick summary. Rigid boundaries are when you're overprotective and they're punishing without room for repair. It's this very zero tolerance, black and white perspective. I saw something I didn't like, I'm done forever, right? Without having any conversations or giving an opportunity to work through it. Porous boundaries are the opposite. It's I basically don't have boundaries. I give too much. I abandon myself. I enable bad behavior. And that leads to me being burnt out. So rigid boundaries over prioritize self-protection and deprioritize connection. Because if you're too rigid and you're overprotective, then you can't actually connect with someone anymore because you're just cutting them off. Whereas porous boundaries over prioritize connection and deprioritize self-protection, right? I don't want to make them upset because I want to maintain that connection. And then I get hurt because now I'm burnt out and overextending.
Hi, guilty.
And then healthy is you get to equally prioritize self-protection and connection, right? It's firm but flexible. Okay, so rigid boundaries. This is when the overprotection leads to disconnection and isolation, very much black and white thinking. There's no gray area. Here are a few examples of it, and then we're going to do a deep dive on one of them. Cancel culture. Cancel culture, the definition from Wikipedia is it's a cultural phenomenon in which an individual thought to have acted or spoken in an unacceptable manner is ostracized, boycotted, shunned, or fired, often aided by social media. This shunning may extend to social or professional circles, whether on social media or in person, with most high-profile incidents involving celebrities. Those subject to this ostracism are said to have been quote-unquote canceled. I went and looked up the definitions of ostracized, boycotted, shunned, and we know what fired is. Fired from a job, right? So ostracized is basically excluding someone from society.
Yikes.
Yeah. Boycotting is trying to inflict economic loss, so make them lose their job, basically, or not be able to make as much money. Shunned means social rejection and ceasing interaction with someone, and then fired is someone losing their job. So you're really trying to pull all resources from someone. We're about to go do a deep dive into cancel culture, but here are some other examples of rigid boundaries before we do that deep dive. So zero tolerance policies in schools or in criminal justice systems. I have a good example of this. One of my friends in high school had a pocket knife that they brought to school and they were using to cut an apple, and they got expelled for that. So they were never allowed to come back to school. And they weren't allowed to come to prom. They weren't allowed to walk at graduation. So it was this zero tolerance. And this was a person who'd never been violent, you know? And yes, were knives not allowed on property? Yeah, that is true. And it's a very black and white response to that. A more gray area, healthier boundary there would be it's not okay for you to have that. And maybe some trust was broken that you brought it. So maybe you can still come to school, but we're going to do a, what is that called?
Pat down?
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like we're going to check what you have to make sure that you don't have anything. And then after you haven't had anything for a while, we're going to trust you again. And we don't have to do that anymore. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about why does cancel culture happen? Why does this rigid boundary happen? It's this idea of collective power over harm. I'm sure there's doctoral level thesis papers on this and tons of research on this. But basically, because there have been and are many examples of boundaries that are too porous in our society where people aren't protected and harm is happening, cancel culture is an extreme response to that. No, this is not okay. We are not allowing this. We have zero tolerance. It's this grassroots justice mechanism to hold people accountable where there aren't other mechanisms to do so or they've failed.
Yeah.
black and white thinking is a big part of this. We see that person's either good or bad. They're right or they're wrong. They're safe or unsafe, which is a very rigid perspective. It really lacks the nuance of this is a good person who made a mistake. This is a person who did something bad and can probably grow from this. Another piece of this too is moral purity and group belonging. Moral purity is really around I am good. When we think about that black and white thinking of people are good or bad, we see this mostly with liberal political perspectives is I'm good. We believe that you're not supposed to harm people and they are bad. So I'm in the good group, they're in the bad group. And so canceling someone can signal I'm morally pure and aligned, which boosts that group cohesion. We aren't like them.
Yeah.
I think we see this more in the Democratic Party, this kind of infighting.
Yeah.
You're not being good. You're not being pure, basically, is what that is. It's really interesting to me. That's probably a whole other conversation. But as long as we are interacting in these I'm good and they're bad, we're always going to have black sheep. We're always going to have scapegoats. And that is not a way that collectively we're going to become safer and less harmful.
Yeah.
I understand where it comes from and that the intentions are good, but we really want to have more nuance in terms of the way that we see other people and then the way that we see ourselves. Guilt instead of shame. Okay, you did something bad, but you are not bad.
Right.
And are there people that I can think of right now in the world that I think are creating a lot of harm and have a lot of power and I wish that they didn't? Yeah.
I'm right.
Yeah. That exists. I just don't think that the answer is let's take away their ability to make any money to provide for themselves. Let's just shame them away. I think it's protect against the behavior. The boundary, the healthy boundary is I need to protect against that harm. We need to stop that behavior. It's not, we need to also ruin the person.
Right, right. It's like people trying to play God and play judge.
Yeah.
That's how I think of it.
Yeah, it's very reactive, it's dehumanizing, and it doesn't leave any room for repair or growth if that's going to happen. So when people are canceled for mistakes, for misunderstood statements, that happens a lot, right? Mm-hmm. Someone accidentally uses a word or says something and it's like, that's problematic for this reason. And so we're done with them. And often these are people who are wanting to say the right things and not be harmful. And so they aren't even given a chance to learn. Yeah, it's just, it's not great. People are also canceled for past behavior that they've already grown from.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're not even
Especially the social
engaging
media.
they're not even engaging in that harm anymore. So that reflects a lack of room for context, for the complexity and the repair. So what's the alternative? It's discernment. It's being able to recognize the gray area nuance, and it is accountability too. We will talk in the next episode actually about accountability. So stay tuned if you want more on that. But just like with healthy boundaries, personal boundaries, on a cultural level, the alternative to cancel culture, it's not to avoid all conflict, but it is to set clear limits that protect from harm, protect that behavior, invite repair and change when possible, and also don't remove the support or the time that it takes for that to happen, which, spoiler alert, next week we are going to be talking about what do people need? What does research show people do need to actually change and grow and repair after they've caused harm? So stay tuned for that. If you think back to the communication styles episode that we did, we talked about passive communication, passive-aggressive communication, aggressive communication, and assertive communication. And aggressive communication is more similar to rigid boundaries, whereas passive communication is more similar to porous boundaries. When we think about healthy boundaries, it's assertiveness. And assertiveness, the belief underneath assertiveness is I matter and they matter. I'm responsible for taking care of me and they are responsible for taking care of them. That means that I can set and hold a boundary to protect myself from harm, to protect myself from their behavior. I can go no contact with this person. I don't need to interact with this person, but I'm also going to hold the fact that they're a human. They're imperfect. They make mistakes, and I'm not going to try to harm them.
Right.
So that's that. Do we want to say anything else?
This all just reminds me of an example. I don't know if we want examples added from yep. Have you ever heard of Rachel Hollis?
Yeah. I do not like her.
Yeah. So she was one who had the cancel culture experience as well. Yeah. Hey, Allie, what are we talking about?
I know, right? I know. So here's a really good example of this, or a really good learning moment. So it is okay for you to have an emotional response, right? So for me to say, good, like,
yeah,
she was causing so much harm. Yeah. It's totally fine for me to think and feel, yeah, I want that person to be harmed. That's completely fine. That is an animal response, and anger is protective.
Yes.
The next piece of that, though, is how are you going to behave? Are you actually going to go do that? Do I think that I think that people can be called out. I think that people can be publicly checked. Here's how this is harmful and this is not okay. And I have a different perspective. But I don't think that the cancel culture actually is healthy or makes sense of trying to get someone to not be able to live.
Yeah. So for her, for her, if you don't know the context of Rachel Hollis, so Rachel Hollis, she started off as what, like a YouTuber sort of thing in terms of, gosh, like a mom. She was a trad wife. I mean,
yeah,
she had a very successful husband with a big corporate Disney job sort of thing and media production, that whatnot. And so there was a lot of money involved with that. And she was a stay-at-home mom. And so she started like doing recipes and things like that. And then she ended up releasing this book, Girl Wash Your Face, which was very aimed at Christian white suburbia. And a lot of her mantras are basically just like, work harder. If you're not getting success, it's because you're not working hard enough. And then a lot of toxic positivity. Long story short, because of her access and who she is, I mean, again, she's white suburbia from an affluent background. She lacks some perspective, and she got canceled because she made, well, there's a lot of things that led up to this, but the one that like was the nail in her coffin was she was doing some sort of Instagram story, I think it was, or a video, a reel or something, and she had made a comment about her housekeeper, and she was like, my housekeeper, the lady. She said, the lady that cleans my toilets.
Ooh.
That's how she referred to the housekeeper. And everyone like latched onto that. And she wasn't trying to go on about the housekeeper. It was just like that wasn't the point of the video, right?
It shows the way that she subconsciously thinks about.
Exactly. And that's what people kept coming up with. And then she also like compared herself and her struggles to those of Harriet Tubman.
Oh my gosh. I started reading that book, but I joined a book club, and that was the first book, and I stopped and left the book club because I couldn't do it. And her whole shtick is, I have this fancy husband and all this stuff, but I'm just like you. She kept trying to be relatable. And then she would also, her brother completed suicide, and she kept saying, I forget exactly what it was. It was a very harmful belief. It was something about, I wish I remember what it was, but she was saying something that was harmful to people if they internalized that belief, and people saying this could really hurt people's mental health. And she said, well, I know all about mental health because I have a brother who completed suicide, so I know more than you. I don't think that you are the
expert in the room.
And also, I think it probably started with people trying to say, hey, can you think about this? Can you reflect? This is harmful. Can you stop sharing these harmful beliefs that then people are going to internalize? And she didn't. And then that's why then people canceled her. But what did the cancellation look like? Do you remember?
So, yes. So she lost a fuck ton of followers on social media. And this was all right before this. That. For sure. But this was all right before a massive tour that she was supposed to be doing. It was like some conference that she did in like 4 or 5 cities. And thousands upon thousands of tickets or whatnot were sold. When this happened, she ended up having to cancel the entire tour.
Oh, because people wouldn't show up.
Yeah, so that's the financial impact for her is like
Well,
her
but
job.
I think that's okay too, because I think the issue is when she goes on maybe to do some other thing that isn't problematic to make money, and people are actively saying, don't
like hunting her down.
Hunting her down and saying, don't give her don't buy the muffins from her. These healthy muffins or, whatever, because she's a bad person. That's different than I'm not going to go to her tour anymore, in my opinion.
Yeah, maybe.
So these are just our opinions, though. So you
For
all
sure.
get to decide what you think. But I would say I don't see that as rigid, because that's more of a healthy boundary, in my opinion, is I choose not to give my personal resources of my money to this person. I choose not to give my energy or my focus to this person and not go to this tour, is different than going out of your way to try to harm someone.
Well, I will say that it was then after that. So she ended up limiting all of her comments on social media. Like you're not able to comment on any of her stuff anymore because people were just constantly attacking on every single post. Like a post about her kids, constantly attacking. A post about herself, constantly attacking. And that's where it starts going really too far. And
I agree with that.
So that was wild.
Examples are good because we get to talk about what
the nuance.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And then I stopped following her pretty immediately. So I only heard about all these other things kind of tangentially. But I think she and her husband got divorced, and before that, she was doing all this stuff with her husband where they were teaching about healthy relationships, and then they got divorced, and people said, hey, can you tell us what happened or why you got divorced? Because now we don't know if we should do the things that you taught us to do. And she basically said, you don't get to know about that. And then people were like, okay, well, then I don't want your healthy relationship curriculum,
All true. And there's nuance to that too. So her husband ended up dying 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. And it's very sad. I actually really liked the stuff that he was putting out compared to what she was putting out. Because he talked more about the nuance and like the ups and downs. And it wasn't just toxic positivity. Yes, you gotta work harder. It was like some days.
Girl,
it's really
wash your face, by the way. What she's saying is if you're crying, stop crying. Shut the F up and go wash your face and do what you have to do. Like, suck it.
Make yourself look nice and keep on trucking.
So just FYI on that.
But with her husband, he was in his 40s, found dead from a cardiac event related to a drug overdose.
Oh.
So what came out, and I could be messing up the exact details of this, but to my understanding of what came out, because it took a long time for the autopsy information to come out, and they were kind of protective of that initially because of the kids.
Yeah.
But what came out was that he was addicted to like cocaine and to alcohol, and he was self-medicating to try to treat his depression.
Sad.
And so some of the implications to why they were working on her marriage and then it failed was because he wouldn't stop using drugs. And it was impacting the relationship with the kids. And like, she was trying to be protective of that in some way or another of, okay, well, I'm not going to let my kids' reputation be tarnished by what their dad is doing.
Yeah.
And so I guess she didn't want to, I mean, that makes sense, right?
It does. It does make sense. I think what's missing is then eventually realizing, oh, maybe these things that people have been sharing are unhelpful, contributes to someone continuing to use substances instead of getting mental health help.
Right. Well, also, and profiting off of something that is not like, that's the bigger part of like, okay, you were profiting off of people and you're giving advice on something that you're not qualified to give advice on.
Yeah. Right. But this is a really good example of, we don't want her kids, the husband when he was alive. We don't want them to be harmed. Right. We just want them to learn and stop harming other people.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I think, again, it's healthy boundaries protect against the behavior. Unhealthy boundaries try to harm and ruin the person and damage the person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Porous boundaries. So this is when your boundaries don't exist or they're too weak to protect individuals, to protect communities, and they allow harm or exploitation to continue unchecked. So some examples of this are institutions that protect abusers to maintain image or power. So think churches, schools, corporations, political parties that minimize or hide abuse to avoid scandal, because that scandal will tarnish their image or it will ruin their power or decrease their power. So right now, everyone who wants the Epstein files to be released, for example, there's abuse and exploitation that occurred. The files would give more information about that so that people who exploited kids could be held accountable, meaning we could stop them from being in positions of power where they might continue to harm other people. That isn't currently happening, probably because, and I won't even say the political party, because there's a lot of Republicans that do want the Epstein files to come out. But there are certain people who might be involved or might be in the files, right? Whose image or power would be tarnished by them coming out. So that's government having porous boundaries, or the Supreme Court having porous boundaries, right? That there isn't enough strength there to actually protect continued harm for people who we know have done it, but we can't identify who they are because it's being kept secret. Another example, cultural pressure to overgive, to overextend. So think hustle culture, being overly productive, or as a woman, being expected to caregive and overextend. So that's where any culture or community where saying no, you're selfish because you are not taking care of other people and you're expected to be endlessly accommodating and sacrifice yourself. Or it's a culture where if you say, no, I can't do that in terms of productivity, well, then you must be weak or you don't have what it takes, right? You know, these job applications, a fast-paced, chaotic environment. Must be there, just like red flag, right?
Yep.
And so in these cultures and communities with porous boundaries where there's pressure to overextend, people are conditioned to override their needs for the benefit of the group or for the benefit of other people. So it's don't have boundaries, don't protect your needs, sacrifice yourself to take care of other people. And individuals are shamed for having boundaries or setting limits. And that leads to exploitation, burnout, learned helplessness. So if you're listening, selfies are more likely to have porous boundaries than rigid boundaries. So think about, where did you learn that from? Where did you learn to overgive or to overextend? I know for me, it was in the context of family that I was shamed for setting limits. And then that was reinforced, right, by other people. This person is your family. So you need, and I remember saying, well, if this was an abusive partner, if this was an abusive romantic partner, you would tell me to leave. Right, but it's not. It's your family. It's worse. That's
Blood
worse.
is thicker than water.
And harm. Yeah, exactly. And harm is harm. Yeah, the blood is thicker than water is, all of that. That's porous boundaries. Right. And so that gets internalized. And then there's this cultural expectation of respect your elders, which of course you should respect your elders. However, does respect mean sacrificing yourself? Does respect mean abandoning yourself? No, it's these extreme but normalized and common versions of respect your family, protect your family, and even at the expense of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about, how I learned porous boundaries, and I don't even think that it was externally said. I think it was just modeled. And that's like a generational thing, right? I think back to just observing my upbringing with my mom specifically. And my mom, I love her to death. She gave so much for her kids. Like, her entire heart and soul is dedicated and was dedicated during our upbringing to making sure that my kids are taken care of. As a result of that, though, I never saw who my mom was as just a person. I only saw her as my mom. So it was really hard for me once I got older now to understand, okay, well, what does a woman look like without the identity of mother, and my whole life is caregiving? right?
Yeah.
Like if I've never seen it modeled that, you have hobbies and you have passions and you have time that you're intentional for yourself.
Right.
I don't know that I have permission to do that when I become an adult. So then
How
you
do
just give your power away.
How did you give your power away? What did that look like for you?
Well, so then with every partner that I had, my thought process was, oh, okay, well, I have to serve them. I've talked about it before, like the
Yes.
dutiful wife conversation, right? That
Yep.
became a lot of my identity. And it's like, okay, well, I have to serve them. I have to make sure that all of their needs are taken care of, not my own needs.
Yeah.
And it's like everything that I need to be put on the back burner. And it's like even when conflict came up in the relationship, it's like, okay, well, I have to default to what makes them comfortable.
Right.
Because their needs are more important than my needs.
Yeah. It's with porous boundaries, the prioritizing connection over personal safety, which includes protecting your bandwidth.
Yeah, it's so wild too, though, because the intentions are good, right?
Yes.
From that, like, I think about my mom and I'm like, yeah, her intentions were good.
Yeah.
All of that is 100%.
Love. Yeah.
It's out of love and out of commitment to like that decision to be a mother.
Yeah.
And it still communicates something like having your own identity and
she
having
internalized it from somewhere else too, right? This is how these things get passed down, because if you don't listen to the Self-Centered Podcast, go to therapy, whatever, and identify, oh, hey, this is a belief. Actually, I don't agree with that belief. How am I showing up in my behavior according to that belief, and how can I shift that? Then you do keep passing it down. So we don't blame her at all. I mean, she's a victim of what she then continued without knowing.
Yeah. And it's just for, flip side, I've seen the pivot on the other side is once we grew up and once we came out of the house, then it was like, oh shit, wait, I need to do all of these things for myself now. And I'm like, oh, okay.
What about
I'm confused.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I think that's even our own
hard.
course correct is it's like, oh wait, I recognize that I abandoned myself in these things for so long. Now it's time for me to take back my power.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that like if we don't recognize these things along the way, that we have a tendency to swing the pendulum really far to either side.
Yeah, the pendulum definitely. And that's normal as part of the process. So hopefully she is able to come to balance on that. And that's
she actually has been sounding like she is.
Oh, I love
I know. It's really sweet. She was telling me the other day, like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about retirement soon. I'm like, oh, mom, not working? What? You have an identity as a human? This is so great.
Oh, I love this.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, we don't blame her at all for any of that. And it is so well intentioned. And it also comes up with a lot of my clients when they have kids and they are doing things differently, and then their parents, so their kids' grandparents, have a lot of perspectives on, you shouldn't be doing that. That's selfish. You need to put them absolutely first. And people are trying now to work through this and become healthier, and I matter and they matter, and being more family focused instead of kid focused, that all of us matter, and maybe modeling and thinking and talking out loud about the family schedule and how many hobbies everyone's can do, because we can only manage so much and everyone matters. So you maybe have to prioritize all that kind of stuff. And that can be seen as selfish for people who haven't been able to recognize these beliefs for what they are and have really good intentions. And of course, they're sharing this because they want their grandkids to have the best. Yeah, it can really show up and create some conflict. And then in terms of hustle culture, the ideas on productivity, overextending yourself, also generational, right? We wrestle with these beliefs and they get passed down, and over time, more and more people start to recognize what's harmful, and it becomes a cultural conversation. And that has definitely happened around work. I remember my ex had this book on his desk that was like managing the millennials. He's Gen X. And so and I'm sure there's research on how to manage Gen Z, because boomers are way more work is everything.
No days off, overtime without logging it.
Yeah, exactly. And then millennials are, I think, in between the boomers and the Gen Z, kind of where Gen Z is like, fuck work, like I do not dream of labor. I don't have a dream job, And so it's very much healthy boundaries. I'm not going to let you exploit me. overwork me, overextend. I'm going to quiet quit. I actually saw this article recently where millennials are now the majority of managers. So leadership is largely millennial now.
Yeah.
More so than any other generation. So millennials are in this place where they recognize that the expectations from higher up are not acceptable. And so they want to protect the people who they're managing, who are most likely Gen Z. So they're trying to protect them while also no one's protecting them.
Yeah.
From the expectations of, but you have to exploit yourself. So millennials, gosh, poor millennials, are in such a rough position for many, many reasons, in many ways. But they're in this position where no one's protecting them and they're going to bat for,
Yes. No, I remember that when I worked in management, that it was like, okay, well, if shifts aren't covered, I'll take them because I'm not going to put people out.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put them in a position to be overworked and burnt out, but it has to get done. And if it doesn't get done, I'm going to hear about it from the people above me. And it's like, okay, well, I'll just be the one to take the brunt to protect my people because
Right.
I need them fresh and I need their mental health okay and I need their physical health okay. But it's like, okay, who's protecting you? And you're trying to raise them up to be managers that would think that way, that, okay, it's important for all of us to get what we need and to not be overextended, but you're overextended doing it.
I know.
It's
So
such
tough.
Oof.
So tough. Okay. So healthy boundaries. We do have some healthy boundaries in our culture. Yay. So let's talk about them. Consent culture is a really good example of this. This is something that's relatively recent in the last 10, 20 years. We're actually having HR do trainings on harassment and at work and that's not okay. There's policies around that. I mean, is it perfect? No, but it's very different than how it used to be for our grandparents who they got taken advantage of. It was normal and you couldn't say anything about it. So consent culture, you can think about clear policies around sexual harassment and personal autonomy. Yes means yes, no means no. This cultural normalized expectation of communicate what's okay, basically communicate your boundaries and what's not okay. Check to see what is or isn't okay. And you can assert your limits without being punished. And that promotes both self-protection, the safety, and connection because there's these shared agreements of everyone has agency, everyone gets to decide. And if you violate that in a workplace, there's a whole investigation. And if that has occurred, then there's a response to that keeps people safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. And then restorative justice, which is this approach to accountability and repair instead of just punishment. And this exists in schools. This exists in law enforcement sometimes. So they prioritize repair, accountability, and relational healing. And harms are addressed, but people aren't just discarded. Like with cancel culture, there's room for taking responsibility, for growth, and it balances the protection of the people who are harmed with opportunities for reintegration and repair with the people who did the harm. So the boundary is still firm, but it's humane. And I have a good example of this because when I was in college, my car got stolen and there was a whole police chase to get the car.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And they were going to bring it to, I guess, what's called a chop shop where they just take parts and sell them. Mm-hmm. And I was given the opportunity to give a statement, a victim statement, to say what I wanted to happen, what would help me feel that the harm was repaired. And if I wanted to, I could write letters to them.
To the people that stole your car?
Mm-hmm. And ask them questions and things like that. That's somewhat an example of restorative justice. The guys did send me letters. And
really?
Yeah. And they paid me something. I forget what it was, but I would get $25 checks every few months.
Oh my gosh. Now, is restorative justice directly to the person that caused harm, or could it be to a bigger... Like, I'm thinking about, I remember reading this article about these 3 criminals they're burglars. People
Burglars?
Burglars.
Burglars.
Thank you. As soon as I thought that word, I was like, I'm going to say this wrong.
It's a burglar. They're stealing burgers.
Burglars.
Yeah, you did it.
People that stole things from people's home. They broke in and they stole things. But they did this full article and explanation of this is how you actually protect your home based off of someone who broke into your home. And this is how you actually, like, things that actually work and things that don't. Is a dog really a deterrent or not? That sort of thing. And like, there was this whole, I want to say it was a New York Times article. It was extensive. It was like probably 30 pages of them just detailing all this stuff. And their thought process was like, yeah, we fucked up. we want to help protect people. That could definitely
be restorative justice. Yeah. I think that there's also something called community justice, which is similar because it's not punitive and it's more about repair and learning. And community justice is about how can we look at the roots of crime, violence, exploitation, and identify where are needs not being met that are causing that, and how can we meet that need proactively. So I think that could maybe fit in with that. And with restorative justice too, victims don't need to be involved if they don't want to be. The whole idea is of the restorative piece is that the victim is now safe and protected, and yes, they can share what they want for repair, but then it's also creating support for the person who caused the harm to learn and grow and be better. So that's the restorative piece, is we're not just going to penalize you, we're going to help you be different.
Got it.
Yeah. So we're almost done. We're basically at the end. We are at the end. All right. So that's it. Don't worry. I'm going to continue. I know. My brain is kind of slow right now. Okay. So that's basically it. You have likely internalized cultural messages about what boundaries should look like, and naming these systems and the types of boundaries associated with them helps you unlearn shame and confusion around your own boundary struggles, because you can look at it and say, oh, I internalized this. I don't actually agree with this. Healing is not just personal. It's also cultural deprogramming. So we want to recognize these things. Over time, there's tons of things that I want to talk about on the pod that is more cultural, bigger lens. And so this is starting that a little bit. It's probably going to take a little bit of time to get there because I think there's just so much personal, individual stuff that we need to give you information on. But all of this is connected to bigger things, right? All of this is connected to things like capitalism, racism, toxic whiteness, all of these things. And so we will get to unpacking that. We've internalized all this stuff because we're in an environment where we're breathing it in, right? Air, when it's dirty, when it's polluted, it gets inside of us and it hurts us too. So we want to be able to recognize these things. And when you can recognize this is just something I learned, then you realize I can unlearn it.
Yeah.
Don't believe everything you think. I just believe this. It doesn't make it true, right?
Yeah.
So some reflection for you. Think about what boundary styles did your family model for you, your religion, your school, your culture. Where do you still carry rigid or porous boundaries that aren't yours, that you don't actually agree with? And what boundary styles are present in the systems that you're currently a part of or impacted by? So workplace is a big one as an adult. Yeah. And then next week, we are going to talk about what actually helps people take accountability, grow, and transform when they've caused harm, especially in a world where we have cancel culture, which confuses performative apologies with real repair.
I just think it's a good opportunity for us, after listening to this episode and recognizing that how we interact with the bigger society that we maybe can't tangibly feel. That's kind of what I meant in the beginning too, is like the society that exists out here in the stratosphere that's kind of overarching, that you can't just reach out and touch with your single connection. So like, I mean, we think about celebrities, we think about political figures. Yeah, it's people that you're like, that is a name and a figure, but it's not someone I know.
Right. Yeah.
And so we have a response to that. And I think about, God, it's just so big on social media. And like you hear the keyboard warriors and that sort of thing. Our knee-jerk reaction to attack and attack and attack and miss the nuance.
Yeah.
I think that is something that we could be more conscientious of.
Stop
that
eating
then,
your own. Stop eating your own.
Yeah, and extending a little bit of grace that direction, and then asking yourself, when I feel drawn to cancel culture or to be
The
very
urge
rigid,
yeah.
and to dehumanize someone, what is this going to imply or create within myself and within the relationships that I have closest to me? And is that, supportive of my values, my belief system, and the things that'll take care of me too? If I was in that situation, would I want someone to extend that rigid boundary? Would I want someone to, let me walk over them with a porous boundary? Or would I prefer that they have a healthy boundary, give me a little grace, and then we work on repair?
Yeah, one of the things that, okay, this is going to be a little random.
Go for it.
Okay, good.
I love random.
And then we'll end. One of the things I think about a lot, this might be a little convoluted. It might be half baked, but I think about, okay, Game of Thrones. Have you seen it? No. Don't. Okay. Anyway, I've seen it all. And if you've seen it, then you might be sad about how it ended. I'm sad about how it ended. I'm about to give a spoiler alert for how it ended. So if you don't want to know, then just end the episode.
Yeah, you're okay. There's not anything else after this aside from our just banter.
Yeah, I mean, I'm about to say something good, but...
Well, unless you don't want to know Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly. Pick your priority. So, okay. Basically, there's Khaleesi, which is she becomes a queen. But in the earlier episodes, in the beginning of Game of Thrones, she was exploited. And her character arc is basically... I was exploited, and then she saves all these enslaved people, and she becomes their leader. And her whole deal is, I'm not gonna exploit or enslave people like I was. And she's this like badass bitch, so fucking hot. She's got dragons. Oh my God. I love dragons. Dragons are my favorite animal. So anyway, the reason people are pissed is because in the end, it's so fucking lazy. She goes crazy and decides to kill a bunch of people, like a whole...
people group?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Mad Queen, she wants the power.
She goes Israel and Palestine on?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is, like, that would have been a fine ending if it made sense for the character.
But that's not her character.
No. There was no... And you could have developed to get there. You could have developed her character to get there. But literally it went from... No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to harm people, like, or allow exploitation to, I'm crazy now, and that's why I did this. Like, literally just, I'm crazy was the quote-unquote development, which is lazy as fuck.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's why we're mad.
Yeah.
That's why we're mad.
That's always what I heard, is that Game of Thrones had a terrible ending. That's why I wouldn't watch it. It's because I'm not going to invest 8
really
seasons
sad.
into that.
Yeah.
That's so much energy and time.
Well, and it's really good until it's not, which is sad. Because imagine like something that's really smart and nuanced, and then it's just lazy, and she's a crazy woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get mad. Anyway, so
it feels like some
So I'm bringing this up because I do think about how... Okay, I'm bringing in Hitler. This is all going to come together. This is all going to come together.
We've got range today.
Okay, so Hitler, right? Hitler believed that you need to purify the race, right? Jews are bad, whatever, less than. I was raised Jewish also, just to be clear. So when I say whatever, I'm not saying that. I mean, anti-Semitism is fucked, and I don't support it. So Hitler's all, what we really need is to only have the Aryan race, right? And so we need to get rid of the Jews. I think about that in contrast with Khaleesi. When you have such a strong belief about what is good, this is what would be good for our country. This is what we need. It's this scapegoat people that's the problem. Mm-hmm. Then that quote unquote commitment to goodness or belief in goodness can blind you to go do really bad things.
Yeah.
So Hitler, we're purifying we're creating a better country. We are getting rid of the rats or whatever he called Jews to dehumanize them. I mean, awful things happened, right? In the name of goodness, in the name of purity. And then with Khaleesi, it's, no, I won't let anyone harm my people. So I'm just going to I'm going to kill children. Yeah. Just randomly, the dragons just literally scorched earth is what happened. So when I think about cancel culture, this is what I think about. We are so overly wrapped up in goodness that we become evil.
Yeah.
And that's why it is so important to distinguish between I'm protecting myself versus I'm harming someone else in the name of self-protection or in the name of community protection.
Yeah. Okay, let's say that again. Yeah. So the big difference is I'm worried about protecting me, my body, my needs, my experience.
Yeah.
Right. People that I have direct influence on and that are important to me versus I'm going out of my seat even to attack and to cause harm to someone. Because that's, again, you trying to have a God complex and instilling justice on someone when no. We just want to create protection.
Right. Yeah. And so I think about people who are angry with Trump. Do I understand why there are people who are angry with Trump? Yeah.
Yep.
Can relate. And a lot of people are like, yeah, we should shoot him. They're fantasizing about torturing him. You know, like you could go online and see the keyboard warriors who are like, we just need to round up all these politicians and do all these awful things to them. And like I said before, I think it's okay for you to have that emotional experience. I think that's 100% okay because, again, because of our animal brain, we need to fully feel and experience our anger. So that's okay. Actually saying that somewhere where you contribute to a culture that actually supports that, that's not good.
Right.
Yeah,
and setting it in motion.
That's reactive. Right? It's not nuance. So when it comes to Trump doing XYZ thing that's harmful, what do we want? We want to protect people who are being harmed by him.
Yeah.
But it's not about going and harming him.
Yeah. It's remove him from power, not murder him.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we are human. We're all going to have experiences of anger and urges toward violence, truly, right? Again, I'm speaking from an evolutionary perspective. Our brains are still in the caveman ages. It has not evolved fast enough to keep up with our changing world. So it's super important because a brain does not conform to social norms. The social norm of, oh, you have this anger where I imagine if my ex was really sad, I would be okay with it, right? But do I actually believe that? No. I want the best for him, right? I don't want to go out of my way and harm him or anything like that. But do I feel that way sometimes and I get mad? Yeah. Do I get mad about people that I know who have hurt you? Yeah. You know, when I tell people things about my most recent ex, and just so everyone knows, I have good relationships with all my exes except for that one. So many of them have said, okay, so what do we need to do? Like, how can I punch him in the face?
Yes.
And that's okay. That's an okay response because
and a lot of times it's a joke.
Yeah,
it's
a
to
joke.
Lighten the mood.
It's just
like
saying,
they're in support of you.
I support you. I'm mad for you, right? But then I think there are some people who truly are like, how can I make this person's life harder? Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So the Google review that I have from someone who's just angry about the things that I'm talking about on the podcast, that is cancel culture, right?
Yeah.
And it's like their belief is Allie's doing something bad, so then I need to harm her.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Not protect myself.
Right.
Not remove myself from hearing the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That would
just
be
stop listening
the healthy
to the
response.
podcast. Or maybe go to therapy to deal with the fact that I'm confusing discomfort about hearing things about myself or people that I care about that feel uncomfortable because I don't want to think of them that way or acknowledge that. I'm confusing that discomfort for I'm being harmed.
Right.
Discomfort
Right.
is different than harm.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really, 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 really important that we let ourselves have our human experience and our initial reactions, but that we don't engage in behavior when we're in the reaction. We need to wait, identify our values, align with our values, and stop eating our own. Stop eating our own. And what do I mean by that? I know just from my clients who are in the LGBTQ community, I think it's just any community that's highly traumatized and harmed from oppression and true violence against them, that it creates this, I need to protect myself. And so that rigid boundary comes in of overprotection of myself and then no connection, right? So it's this cancel culture of that person said something problematic. They're an unsafe person. We need to harm them, or we need to call them out or ruin their lives, right? And again, I don't judge the experience of that, right? Like that is something that comes from trauma. That's because you don't feel safe, because you legitimately haven't been safe.
It reminds me too of, I can't remember exactly what episode we talked about this, but there was a piece of, okay, when someone does something to you, you have a response to, you're like, ew. Like you say that just out loud. And it's like having that verbal affirmation to yourself that, oh no, hey, it's true that this behavior was yucky.
Yes.
We want to get away from that.
Yes. Right. Exactly. Yes.
And naming the anger at that point too. It's like, okay, if I'm angry about this and my visceral reaction is, well, good, they should be having that experience or whatnot. And it's like, okay, yeah, I am reaffirming that this is a value, that behavior was not okay.
Yes. Right. Right. Because if we bypass that experience, then we're not validating that the behavior was and is harmful and impacted us.
So then we gaslight ourselves.
Exactly. So then we gaslight ourselves. Whereas we want to allow ourselves to have that experience, not bypass it, but then protect ourselves from behavior, but not harm the person.
You know, that is something. Sorry, I really feel like I'm going on a tangent here.
It's okay.
On
yeah, we thought we were ending, but here we are. It's like
here we are 10 minutes later.
But this is what happens. It's like, I'm done teaching. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Here's all my thoughts about Hitler and Khaleesi.
Oh, gosh. So one of the things that it sends me for a mind fuck. You guys know I got out of a relationship a few months back, and I have moments where I'm fucking pissed at that guy, you know? Yeah. And I'm like, I'm reacting in my anger of, oh, this is so frustrating. And like, he, you know, deserves to have shitty experiences.
Yeah.
Because he imposed shitty experiences to me. And then I'm also like, I don't want him to have shitty experiences. Like, you know, like I want okay things for him. There was something that happened somewhat recently that I learned that a shitty experience was happening to him. And I was like, oh man, I really hope that shitty experience did not play out in XYZ way. Because that would really harm him. And I really don't want him to be harmed like that.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like holding those two things side by side of like, oh, I'm so frustrated. And, oh, but I really don't want him to be harmed. It's like, it's a mind fucked at times.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying in terms of validating, no, you want to be protective of the fact that, hey, this harm occurred and you don't want that harm to occur. So validate it to yourself that it was not okay for that harm to occur. And we still recognize that the person is human and we want them to have as much self-centered protection as we have self-centered protection.
Exactly. Yeah. I matter and you matter.
Oh, the ands. God damn it.
It's all the ands. It's all the
ands are so hard.
Yeah. It's like self-protection, self-defense versus going out and harming someone.
Yeah. This is the whole, I remember when I learned in therapy about parts, that there are multiple parts of you and multiple parts can be true at the same time, even if they feel contradictory. Yeah. This is that in my mind. I'm like, oh, I know. This is so hard to hold.
Messy gray area. Yeah. Okay. I think that's it. And just to be clear, I think y'all know this, but just to be clear, whoever you are, and if you've eaten your own, right? If you've engaged in cancel culture, if you have had boundaries that are too porous, any of that, if you've harmed other people, which you probably have because you're human, I've harmed other people too. We're not trying to shame you. We're not trying to call you out. We're more saying, hey, here's a human thing that relates to Katie and me and relates to you. And here's how this dynamic works and functions, and here's what we can do differently.
Yeah.
Because you probably want that for yourself and for society.
Yeah.
So there is no judgment here. It's just, recognizing these things.
And if you're feeling judgment and you're feeling a visceral reaction to this episode, this might be a great opportunity to go back and listen to the ego episodes and the guilt versus shame episodes to kind of refresh
shame. I think guilt versus shame actually might be really good.
Yeah.
Maybe guilt versus shame first. So then when you listen to the ego episode, your ego doesn't feel too shamed.
Yeah, no,
because
for
we
sure.
all have egos, right? I mean,
yeah.
We're just trying to have some influence over our ego so that we're in charge of it instead of it being in charge of us. Okay, that's it. That's all. Okay, now
We've done it. We're going to walk away.
Okay, bye. We'll see you next week where we talk about how do people actually take accountability, grow, and transform when they've caused harm instead of just giving a performative apology for social media that isn't real and actually grow. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at selfcentered.pod or connect with us at selfcenteredthepod@gmail.com.
Stay self-centered, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Peace.